Welcome back, and yes, I know, the Anycubic Kobra S1 Combo has already been out for a few months now, so you might be asking yourself why a review only now. The reason is actually quite simple. Right after release, many YouTubers had already published the tests, a lot of quick impressions, the usual benchy and tolerance tests, and of course the weaknesses that immediately stood out back then. But there's the thing, a printer evolves. Firmware updates come out, profiles get adjusted, and sometimes the real problems only appear weeks later. And this is where it gets exciting. But now there's the jailbreak. That means you can open the closed Anycubic system and actually gain access to native Klipper. Suddenly, the printer becomes a lot more interesting for people who don't just want to click and print, but who want to fine-tune everything. In addition, the jailbreak now allows direct access via Orca Slicer. That doesn't just make the workflow more convenient, it also opens up completely new possibilities. I also wanted to know what's the situation today after 4 months on the market. Have the downsides that everyone criticized back then improved, or are they still the same pitfalls? Because sometimes it makes sense to deliberately buy a model that's been out for a few months precisely because it had time to mature and usually drop in price, instead of buying the brand new device right away and dealing with all the early bugs yourself. That's exactly what we will look at today. We will go through the pros and cons, check what has improved, and I promise you this will be very interesting. Before we dive into the jailbreak, let's take a look back and summarize what was said about the Anycubic Kobra S1 Combo in the last few months. Technically, the printer looks pretty exciting at first glance. It's a fully pre-assembled Core XY machine with a build volume of 250 by 250 mm. The housing is compact and enclosed, built from a steel frame and plastic panels, and weighs around 20 kilos. The heated bed goes up to 120 degrees Celsius, the nozzle up to 320 degrees. And the print surface is a double-sided PE sheet. Inside, it uses a direct drive extruder combined with linear guides and a triple synchronized C-axis. Particularly eye-catching, the Ace Pro, the multi-material system that not only switches filaments but also works as a filament dryer. So the hardware looks solid. Even without a heated chamber, the machine prints ABS surprisingly reliable. In operation, it's noticeably quieter than many competitors, and the Ace Pro itself, not the fastest, but extremely reliable even with cardboard spools. But of course, there are weaknesses. The bed, due to its thinness, is often not flat and the auto leveling isn't perfect. The AI camera for error detection gave many false alarms and couldn't be simply disabled mid-print. It only comes with a press nozzle and the 480p camera resolution feels nostalgic. Likely the reason is that higher resolutions can't be handled by the processor since the images are streamed through the cloud. Speed-wise, the filament profiles slow it down and the marketed speed are not reached. PLA is kept at about 18 cubic millimeters per second, which in practice is around 225 millimeters per second. In addition, the slicer defaults to gyroid info, looks nice, but costs about 20% more time compared to the grid info. And perhaps the biggest drawback, Anycubic runs a closed ecosystem. Presumably a modified Klipper fork, no open network support for Orca Slicer, but cloud only or good old USB stick. A very detailed review can be found on a real hidden gem channel, Aurora Tech. They cover every detail in depth, and I won't dive into that today since most of you are probably already familiar with it. In summary, the hardware is really strong, but the software and workflow left much to be desired. Many testers said back then, if Anycubic improves here, the Kobra S1 Combo could become a real insider tip. And that's exactly what we will look at today. What's changed since then and how does the jailbreak change the game? First, I want to talk about my highlights after my in-depth testing. Top of the list for me is the Ace Pro. Not because of the multicolor function, I barely use that as the waste of production of MMU systems really bothers me, but because of the hot air filament drying. That's genuinely practical, especially with hygroscopic materials. What I find really useful though is the endless spool function. You can load multiple filaments into the Ace Pro, and once one spool runs out, it automatically switches to the next. For me, that's the real killer feature. Clean, dried spool management without manual intervention. Of course, I have to point out some design flaws. So anyone working with ABS knows the problem. The rolls are packed very tightly due to the low density. And those don't fit properly into the box with the diffuser lid. Lid closed, not happening. Then there are little plastic brackets at the bottom that prevent full rows from running smoothly. Honestly, I still don't know the purpose of it. My guess is that they were meant to stop the filament from skipping when rewinding, but it causes more problems that it really solves. Another highlight, the built-in resume after error. Many shrug at that, but I worked flawlessly for me several times, especially during my early jailbreak experiments that sometimes pushed the processor to its limits. Normally the print would crash. Here, after a power reset, it continued right away. No set homing needed, only XY, reheat and go. That works because the printer saves the progress after each G-code line and deletes what's been processed. Of course, if parts detach during cooldown or the bed sags, even the best resume won't help. But if everything is fine, this feature is pure gold. And while many disliked it, I have no complaints about the Anycubic slicer. For me, it has everything Orca offers, just pre-packaged with optimal profiles and start-end codes. Sure, if you run a fleet of printers, you will want everything centralized in Orca, but if you only work with the Kobra itself, the Anycubic slicer is perfectly fine. I also found the auto-flow calibration feature interesting. I long wondered how it works. As far as I understand it, it uses the pressure sensor in the tool head. Based on the measured force, it detects how hard the extruder is pushing the filament. Also, the AI camera feature can now finally be disabled. So that are my highlights, but now let's talk about the weaknesses. And sadly, they are still around. Starting with the bed leveling. It's still not great. I've never been a big fan of those hot end pressure sensors. They sound clever on paper, but in practice at this price point they are not accurate enough. You notice right away when heating the bed to 100 degrees Celsius, the bed is relatively thin, and after heat soak, I had about 0.7 millimeters difference across the build surface. This could be compensated with the bed mesh, but the C offset was often not perfectly aligned. Unfortunately, you can't adjust it on the fly in the standard UI either. What bothers me the most though is the hard-coded start code. Anycubic wanted to let users choose modules like bed mesh, resonance test, or flow calibration in a modular way. Sounds great, but in practice, if you enable everything, you can wait nearly 20 minutes before a print even starts. Why? It's simple. It heats to 200 degrees Celsius, does a nozzle clean, cools to 150 degrees Celsius, then set homes, bed mesh, input shaper, home again, and then heats up back to 220 degrees, another nozzle clean, cool down again, set home, set offset calibration, and then back up to 220 degrees Celsius. These endless heating and cooling cycles could easily be streamlined by running all modules in one go after the first clean. And the perhaps most important point, Anycubic still forces a closed ecosystem. And here's where things get interesting, because this is exactly where the jailbreak comes in and it really changes things. But before we get into that, a quick word from today's sponsor. Many of you probably already know Geek Buying, one of the largest online shops for 3D printers, lasers and all kinds of tech gear. The nice thing, the machines don't ship from faraway warehouses but directly from European hubs. For the Anycubic, it ships from a German warehouse and arrives within 2 business days. That means fast shipping, new customs, surprises, and usually very fair pricing. I order there regularly myself. What I like, they often run great discount campaigns, and if you want to grab the Kobra S1 Combo with a roll of filament right now for 429 euros, check out the link in the video description. That way, you also support our channel. Thank you very much for that. Alright, now for the exciting part, the jailbreak. It's called Rinkhals. Yes, that's actually a South African Kobra. Fits the printer's name quite well, I think. It was developed by Pantone, and you will find info on GitHub and in the official documentation. Links are in the description as always. So, what does Rinkhals do? Simply, it cracks open the closed Anycubic system and finally gives us the access we expect from a modern Core XY. Instead of being stuck in a semi-open, semi-proprietary ecosystem, Klipper suddenly runs in a Go version. A bit stripped down directly on the device. The advantage, all stock functions remain intact. You don't lose the convenient Anycubic UI, but you also gain full freedom. We can use mainsail or fluid, including Moonraker, with all the features we are used to. We have SSH access to the system, direct configuration, file editing, and OTA updates. No more USB stick gymnastics. On top of that, there's an app system allowing plugins like Octo Everywhere or Tailscale, and even tools for remote monitoring. And this is the big one for me. You can finally integrate Orca slices directly, cleanly, without workarounds. Exactly what we've wanted since released. With this, the Kobra S1 is no longer tied to a closed ecosystem, but becomes a real Klipper printer with full software freedom. And the best part, installation is surprisingly simple. Firmware file onto USB stick, plug it in, done. Afterwards, a Rinkhals icon appears on the menu for control. In short, with Rinkhals, the Kobra S1 Combo transforms from a printer with strong hardware but weak software into a machine that finally realizes its true potential. A really clever detail with Rinkhals is how configuration changes are handled. There's a dedicated file called printer.custom.config. Everything I put there is automatically merged with the main config at startup. That means I can add new sections, override existing values, or even remove whole parts. The original config stays clean and my customizations live in a separate file. To verify that my changes were applied, I can check printer.generated.config. There I see the complete merge config that Go Klipper actually uses. Of course, it all has to prove itself in practice. That's exactly what I tested. For single color prints, I started with the new PLA X from Nobufil. The material itself is excellent and prints beautiful. Sure, deep black hides a few minor imperfections, but with input shaping enabled, you have to look hard to spot them. Next up was ABS from Melt Pro. Since I plan to build the 250, I had the Kobra S1 print parts for it. And honestly, considering the price range, I'm more than satisfied by the quality. Forget comparisons with the H2D, which costs about 4 times more. Looking closely, you will notice some VFA artifacts, normal at this class and not a big deal in daily use. And even though I'm not a big fan, I had to test MU printing, particularly for long-term stability. I did 2 prints, a mini precision puzzle with about 70 filament changes and a multicolor stealth burner cover with around 170 changes. Apart from the waste, the color swaps were flawless. Only with full ABS spools did problem occur. They didn't rewind properly, but to be fair, the Bamboo AMS had exactly the same issue. Sometimes I had to unwind about 100 grams first if the filament was wound tightly near the rim. The single color endless spool prints, however, run perfectly. A real plus, I was able to use up 3 nearly empty PLA spools for the large part. Exactly what this feature is great for. To check layer stacking, I also printed 2 small test cones. The result, the S1 holds its own. Layer quality is consistently clean and stable. For long-term testing, I printed a moon lamp, print time about 26 hours. Result, flawless without interruptions, and the print quality is quite impressive. Time for the verdict. The Anycubic Kobra S1 Combo currently costs €429 with the coupon including Ace Pro and a roll of filament. That's very competitive. For comparison, the Creality K2 Combo starts about €250 higher, and the Pro version is about €1,100. The Bambolab P1S Combo is also significantly more at $699. At this price, the S1 Combo offers a pretty solid package. You get a fully assembled Core XY with multi-material, integrated filament drying, quiet operation, and good ABS performance. With the Rinkhals Jailbreak, the system opens up further. Orca Slicer, mainsail, SSH access, and custom configs make it much more flexible than stock firmware ever allowed. On the flip side, some issues remain. The set offset is still not perfect, the camera is outdated, and multicolor printing generates a lot of waste, like all MMUs do. And the hardware isn't designed to run pure Klipper with maximum tuning at stable performance. So, who is the Kobra S1 Combo for? On one side, classic beginners. For a relatively low price, you get a closed machine that reliably prints ABS and PLA, especially with Ace Pro's spool management and trying. Resume on error can even save at print shop. Then for advanced tinkerers. With Rinkhals, you can bring the printer onto the Klipper world and lift it to another level, though it requires more knowledge and initiative. And for power users, if you need maximum speed, high-res cameras and open systems out of the box, well, you will be better off with pricier models like the Cradle T K2. In short, the Kobra S1 Combo today offers a lot of its price class, but has clear limitations. Whether it's right for you depends on whether you're okay with those limits or willing to tinker with Rinkhals. And that's it for today. But don't worry, things stay excited here on the channel. In the coming weeks, we will look at the new Frozen Orko. We'll push the Stingle AH even further. There's still plenty of potential. If that sounds interesting, hit subscribe, leave a like, and as always, drop your questions, experiences, and good vibes in the comments below. Maybe we will feature them in the next video. Stay safe and see you in the next one.